Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Inspiring Leadership Podcast. And I've got another inspiring leader for you, Alex. Alex is from Russia. Let me tell you about him. He's written a book called Defiance: How to Succeed in Business Despite Being Hounded by the FBI, the KGB, the INS, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, Interpol, and Mafia hitmen. What a fascinating book this is, and also what a life it is. Alex is a Russian-born entrepreneur and a former banker, widely recognized for his dramatic life story that spans the tumultuous post-Soviet business landscape, high-profile legal battles, and ventures into technology and media. Born in the USSR, a physics student, he moved away from Moscow and started anew, quickly amassing significant wealth by pioneering private banking and brokerage businesses. He had, by the age of 25, established the Russian Exchange Bank, the first to receive a currency trading license from the Yeltsin government, and was considered one of the wealthiest people in Russia with an estimated net worth of $300 million. Alex played a role in funding Boris Yeltsin's rise to power and founded about 100 companies across various sectors in Russia. In 1992, Alex was kidnapped during a business trip to Budapest, after which his assets in Russia were seized. He claimed persecution by former KGB agents, not surprised, they do that, and organized crime, which are linked, prompting his flight to the United States. The Russian authorities accused him of embezzlement and sought his extradition, but the courts granted him asylum. And he won a multi-million-dollar libel judgment against Russian newspaper and was awarded compensation for his legal expenses by US judges. Then became an entrepreneur in the United States, where he is now in Washington, D.C. And in 1992, I love his particular stance and his advocacy. Following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a special operation, I think Putin called it, Alex made headlines by offering $1 million bounty for the arrest of Vladimir Putin, calling for Russian officers to act in accordance with their constitutional duty and labeling, quite correctly, Putin a war criminal. He's publicly opposed Putin's regime, citing the elimination of free elections and the murder of political opponents. They seem to have falling out of the window disease as motivations for his stance. He's been heavily involved in crypto. Unicorn is his choice, and he's had a fascinating life. Alex, that's a hell of an introduction and a hell of a life. Welcome.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on your program.
Well, it's lovely to be here. And I think was it Brian J. Esposito recommended you?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And Brian, like you, is fascinated by the whole world of crypto, which you need to be a bit of an expert on that to really understand it. So I won't go too deep into that. But I would love to go back to the days of Boris Yeltsin. I found it fascinating in those days, that Wild West, when you made your millions. What was it like with Boris Yeltsin? Didn't you accompany him to America?
I did. In fact, my first trip to the United States was when I was accompanying Boris Yeltsin on his first state visit to the United States. At that time, he came to see, and I joined him to see George W.H. Bush.
Oh, yeah.
George Bush the Senior. And then we went to Canada to see Prime Minister Maloney. And that experience, not just this trip, but the whole experience with Boris Yeltsin was something very different from what you would typically expect from politics and campaign financing.
Yeah. And did you get to meet Gorbachev?
I did, but only after he was ousted out of power. I was in a different camp because, as you probably remember, Gorbachev and Yeltsin were fighting a pretty bitter war. Yeltsin prevailed, and if you were in Yeltsin's camp, you wouldn't be hanging out with Gorbachev. But I did get to hang out and actually live in his official state residence, which Yeltsin assigned to me when he ousted Gorbachev out of the Kremlin and his state residence.
What an amazing life you have had. How
It's never
how
been boring.
how do you manage to go from like supreme wealth at the age of 25 to being hunted down by mafia hitmen, being kidnapped by the KGB and various people? How do you keep your feet grounded and not get too full of yourself and arrogant? How do you keep real?
Mm, well, first of all, I was born in a very modest family. Uh, my mother was a teacher. It wasn't a high earning profession in the Soviet Union. My father was a university teacher, and so we lived quite modestly.
Hmm.
Nobody promised me wealth. Maybe I can apply that adage of easy come, easy go, meaning I didn't expect
Hmm.
that wealth to come to me as a birthright. And I knew that nothing in Soviet Union was ever stable for people who succeeded in life and business. In fact, millions of successful Russians were shot by the communists or sent to Siberian prisons simply for being successful.
Yeah.
That's the whole story of the country. So when you live in a country which is known for decades of exterminating successful people and expropriating their wealth, you are not taking anything for granted. In fact, you kind of expect such expropriations, attacks to happen. It's the price you expect to pay for your success.
Yeah, let's go back to earlier part of your upbringing. To have so much success at the age of 25. What was the ingredient that led to your success? I mean, clearly you were in the right place at the right time. You saw the opportunities. You've got a talent for spotting a gap in the market and really doubling down, tripling down on it. But what led at 25 to being one of the richest men in Russia?
Well, first of all, times have changed. In 1992, just with $300 million, I was one of the richest person in the country. Now you cannot buy a single soccer player with that money.
Yeah.
But the market in Russia in 1991 and 1992 was entirely different, much, much smaller.
Hmm.
It was a reforming Soviet Union. In fact, the Soviet Union imploded at the very end on the Christmas day of 1991.
Yeah.
And so in Soviet Union, everybody was poor. So with $300 million, you were fabulously rich. At least you were considered to be such in the country. And foreign companies have not yet entered the market. So the whole market consisted from millions and millions of essentially poor or modestly wealthy at best Soviet citizens. And that was the time when I operated and I owned a few banks, commodity arbitrage business, and some construction businesses.
Yeah. And in that world, which was a bit like the American Wild West, I mean, people got killed, people got taken out. I mean, you were quite lucky to have survived through all these different things and various people who would be jealous of your position. What's been the closest shave that you've had to your life being taken? I know you were kidnapped, but what else has happened?
Yeah, that was probably the closest because I was in the hands of people who intended to murder me. And it was by luck and uh, some skills that I was able to escape alive,
Hmm.
which is much more than I can say about some of my colleagues. That was indeed the time when entrepreneurs, especially heads of banks, were murdered quite routinely, poisoned, shot, kidnapped, and tortured. So I had a brush with that reality. That happened in Budapest in August of 1992. And having escaped the kidnappers, I was facing a choice whether to return to Russia or not. It wasn't an easy choice. In Russia, well, that was my country, the country I knew quite well, a country in which I was successful, a country in which I built uh, successful business. Uh, the West was total uncertainty to me. Uh, and it wasn't an easy choice for this and many other reasons. But after some consideration, I took the first plane to New York, and I have never visited Russia again.
Yeah, and if you did, you'd happen to fall out of a window, I'm sure.
That was one possible scenario. Another scenario was to become one of them. I mean, one of the KGB related people who are running Russia now. There are examples of such entrepreneurs in Russia now, but I wouldn't want to swap my life for their life.
No.
Even though they are rich, powerful, and successful, uh, from the look at them, they don't look happy. And I think they made too many deals with the devil to really enjoy that success.
Yeah, and you've got that combination between serious organized crime, the KGB, the state, Putin. They're all so closely linked, aren't they? It's hard to differentiate who is who.
Yeah, in early 90s, I wrote an article, Mafiocracy, which was often quoted in
So what do you
describe
what do you call it again?
mafiocracy.
Mafiocracy. I like that.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
basically describing that Russia is turning from that short period of democracy, a very short period, was turning into something entirely different. A country run by a combination of, just as you just stated, the KGB, organized crime, and corrupt oligarchs.
yeah, yeah. And I
As
think
for the combination which allowed me to achieve success in my mid 20s, I failed to answer that question. To a very large degree, it was indeed being at the right time in the right place.
yeah,
It doesn't matter how talented you are. In most countries, you cannot possibly have this degree of success by age of 25.
yeah,
There are a few exceptions, like Mark Zuckerberg, I think, became a billionaire at the age of 27. But you can count all such success stories by fingers of one hand.
yeah,
In Russia, however, at that time, most of successful entrepreneurs were young, and they were successful because they were young.
yeah,
Because everybody who was older and had skills and ambitions, they already had some position of success in life of different degree.
yeah,
They had something to lose. That's what I'm trying
yeah,
to describe. And so when the perestroika reform started, they hesitated. They did not rush into private businesses or anything. They were skeptical. They were more aware about that history of Russia's failed reforms than reforms would be announced but prove to be short-lived
yeah,
and lead to extermination of people who believed in those reforms. So while everybody older with skills and means were hesitating, waiting, or just being skeptical, it was us, young generation, which had basically nothing to lose and often were more naive, more enthusiastic, energetic, uh, who launched in the business first and had that head start, which some of us later converted in leading position in various businesses. I
Yeah.
was probably the youngest of top league business people in Russia, but some people were 3, 4, 5 years older.
Yeah. I'm always interested in leaders like you and what shaped you into the successful leader you were at 25, but also you are now. You've had some ups, you've had some downs. You got yourself involved in crypto, I think Unicoin, um, a sort of alternative to Bitcoin, more scalable and audited. Um, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Committee, blocked and are trying to damage Unicoin. Where is Unicoin at the moment? What's going on with Unicoin?
You cited the subtitle of my book, How to Succeed in Business Despite Being Hounded by, and then there was a long list of organizations. Some of them are part of that alphabet soup agencies
Hmm.
here in the United States, which had persecuted me, hounded me at some periods of time. Most of them, actually all of them, were doing it on behest of the KGB.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
they didn't really have any beef with me on their own, but the KGB forced, blackmailed, strong armed the United States government into trying to destroy me.
Hmm.
So one of my friends observed that the ACC probably saw my book and felt insulted that their name didn't appear in that subtitle. And they indeed targeted us as the part of that notorious war on crypto,
Hmm.
which the previous administration, Gary Gensler was the chairman of the SEC under Biden. He launched and waged that war on crypto, which later led to 18 states suing the SEC for constitutional violations, and the federal court finding gross abuses of power as a part of that war on crypto. So unfortunately, we became one of the targets of Gensler's SEC. To be more precise, his very last target, the last company he targeted after already announcing his resignation and after Donald Trump was re-elected with a promise of fire Gary Gensler right on the inauguration day and to add the war on crypto. But we are still dealing with the consequence of that persecution. I have won 5 lawsuits against the federal government in the United States, and
Wow.
now I'm going for 6 out of 6.
Wow. That's a hell of a record.
Yeah, of course, past performance does not guarantee future results. That's what the ACC makes us always state when you refer to something you achieved in the past.
Yep.
And I must admit, none of those 5 cases was easy to win. All of them took a lot of time, a lot of effort, because even when you have the facts and the law on your side, it's still extremely difficult to win over the federal government. They have unlimited resources and a lot of influence on the courts.
Yeah. And I see in some ways some kind of connection between your early days, age 25 in the USSR, as it dissolves, it with banking and different 100 different businesses and things like that, and the confidence that you need to have for people to believe in you when you're very young in a time of great change and reform, to now being in the world of Bitcoin or Unicoin or crypto. I think I'll use the word crypto. That a lot of the time people are uncertain. Is it real? Does it exist? Is it going to make a lot of money? And you've seen how it goes up, and then it comes down, and then it goes up, and it goes down, and people have made millions, and people have lost millions. What's your advice to laymen about crypto? I mean, clearly you're, I imagine, a fan, but how do you think it's going to evolve in the next 2 or 3 years? What's going to happen with the world of crypto, blockchain, and things like that?
I'm not sure that many people even realize why there is so much talk about crypto nowadays. Yeah, partially it's because, as you just stated, some people made millions, some people made even billions, and some people lost a lot of money. Yes, that's definitely part of the story. Uh, but I think that crypto is getting so much attention because some politicians and some business leaders realize that it's the next step in the evolution of money. The evolution which started with primitive forms of money such as seashells or cattle. And then for centuries it was gold and other precious metals. And then things started to accelerate. Paper money, plastic, wire transfers, payment applications. Now few people carry cash. Cash now is primarily just for tips. For everything else, you either scan your Apple Watch or iPhone, or if you are an old timer, use a plastic card. So the money is predominantly digital. And crypto is simply more efficient, more secure form of digital money. Therefore, digital money is expected to move to transform into crypto, to adopt blockchain technology instead of the early form of digital money, which was a single ledger technology. And if this transformation happens, then we are talking about a volume of money exceeding $90 trillion. The crypto market already stands at about $4 trillion. I think slightly over 4 trillion. But it's expected to grow maybe 20 times over. And with such a monumental shift in form of money, it's a race for dominating this new form of money. Throughout the history, people who controlled money were in a very powerful position, like gold mine owners, or United States government, which prints a de facto international currency, US dollar. One of our board members, Rosie Reyes, she used to be the treasurer of the United States. She printed $2 trillion of cash, roughly $2 trillion. So she used to joke that she made more money than any other person on the planet. So that's just illustration of how influential, how powerful it is to be in a position to control the form of money, the dominant form of money. And now that it's becoming crypto, there is a race for dominating that new form of money. So companies which successfully promote the crypto, position it among top cryptocurrencies, are new equivalent of people who used to own largest gold mines.
Yeah. And what are the if you were predicting what you think the way it will go in crypto, which one do you think will dominate the crypto market?
Well, I can say with high degree of certainty that it's highly unlikely to remain to be Bitcoin. Bitcoin is obviously the most successful cryptocurrency currently. It has over 60% of the crypto market now. It's a household name. For many people, crypto and Bitcoin is synonymous. But Bitcoin was not created to be the ultimate cryptocurrency. At that time, 16 years ago, that would be a foolish ambition. People didn't even know what crypto was.
Yeah.
So creators or creator of Bitcoin was trying, apparently, to achieve a different objective, specifically to provide a tool for financial anonymity, a tool to hide money,
Yeah.
hide it from the government or governments, maybe from partners, spouses. That was the initial use of crypto. It was semi-legal or outright illegal use during the primary years of crypto, and for years afterwards, even after Bitcoin had overgrown that murky origin, there was still stigma attached to crypto as the result of that shady past.
Yeah.
So created to provide anonymity, Bitcoin was not built for scalability. It already consumes more power than the Netherlands or Argentina. If you scale it up and make it a method of routine payments, it will fry the planet. Because it consumes so much energy, it's cost prohibitive. A transaction costs about $8. That's fine if you invest $1 million or some hundreds of thousands of dollars, but for routine transactions, it's cost prohibitive. And finally, it's not scalable. It can only process 7 transactions per second. And for comparison, credit card companies can process tens of thousands of transactions per second. So with all of that, Bitcoin is a good storage of wealth, but it's not going to be a leading cryptocurrency. New cryptocurrencies must emerge which would be more scalable and more cost efficient. And that was exactly the objective which we set for Unicoin. And that's precisely why the SEC under Gary Gensler felt that they needed to stop us, because otherwise his war on crypto would be lost.
And is Unicorn still got a chance of making it through and beating the others? Because it's obviously a race between the different cryptocurrencies to which one, a bit like sort of in the days when we're trying to decide between VHS and Betamax, which is going to be the standard. How do you think Unicoin's doing so far?
Well, I'm not going to hide the fact that the SEC did succeed in inflicting humongous damage on Unicoin. Essentially, they blocked our path forward about 15 months ago. That's when they attacked us. And they did it right immediately after us announcing our plans to go public on New York Stock Exchange and on crypto exchanges. The word from the SEC, which we heard, was that Gary Gensler was chauffeured around New York City and saw our logo everywhere, because we had very high visibility in New York City and some other cities at that time. And since it was the middle of his war on crypto, he called his enforcers, yelled at them, and the next thing we knew was that everybody around us started to get subpoenas.
Wow.
Our auditors, our brokers, our investment bankers, regular banks, our investors, consultants, well, obviously us too. So it was immediately and deliberately disruptive. Now we are in communications with the legislative leaders here in the United States, with senior people in the US administration, in order to undo this damage, allow us a public listing on New York Stock Exchange. We filed an application a year and a half ago, and it has been sabotaged by Gary Gensler's SEC, and now we need to resume. So with all of that, we want to be made in the USA, alternative to Bitcoin, more scalable, more cost efficient, and fully transparent.
Yeah, And on that one, on fully transparent, as you say, for me as a layman, Bitcoin and other things were always associated with drug dealers and people trying to hide where their money was. With something like Unicoin, because it's blockchain, you can actually track where it's come from and who it belonged to and where it's going, can't you? Is that correct?
You can see transactions between different wallets, but nobody knows which wallet belongs to whom.
Ah,
In
right. Okay.
fact, nobody even knows who created Bitcoin. And it's an important question because that person or that entity still owns more than 1 million Bitcoins. Somebody owns more than $100 billion worth of Bitcoins now, and nobody even knows who that person is.
Wow.
That person is that party is known as Satoshi Nakamoto. The legend in which many people want us to believe is that it was an individual called Satoshi Nakamoto, or at least using that pseudonym. I believe that it was more likely the Chinese intelligence. I don't think that it's even plausible to think that some person was genius in cryptology
Mm.
and simultaneously a James Bond in spycraft, hiding his identity to the degree where nobody can discover it despite humongous effort to identify that person. And that person, a combination of James Bond and Einstein, was simultaneously also as altruistic as Mother Teresa, and have never touched any part of his $100 billion wealth. I do not believe that such person can exist on this planet. Whereas, if you think about a major intelligence agency, let's say the Chinese intelligence agencies are funded by the government, so they are not in need to cash out. That $100 billion wealth is a nice line on the balance sheet of a government agency. Intelligence agencies specialize in secrecy and they are experts in cryptology. In other words, from this perspective, everything becomes logical. Whereas the legend about an individual, I don't think it's plausible at all.
Great. Well, look, thank you for that. I found that a fascinating discussion on the whole world of crypto, and there's such a lot of depth to it. And as I say, you and Brian both have a fascination in this and know a lot more than me. Let's just talk more about. We're back to the theme of inspiring leadership. You've worked with a lot of leaders over time, good leaders and bad leaders, misleaders. For you, how would you define inspiring leaders that you've known and those who are more Machiavellian, authoritarian, and downright evil? Just describe the qualities of the inspiring ones first, and you might want to call out anybody that you found inspiring before we talk about what you've got to watch out for on the more toxic side.
Uh, Leaders are often not nice people. It's hard to be a nice person and a leader. Uh, and therefore, when I'm looking or interacting with leaders, I rarely, strike rarely. I never saw somebody whom I wanted to imitate A through Z. It was like, from this leader, I can learn this particular trait, or he is great at this, whereas he sucks at that. So it's always a combination of good and bad. Good and bad subjective values which we ascribe, but I'm obviously sharing my impressions. And you try to learn what you have to learn. And sometimes you learn by observing and adopting strengths, And sometimes you learn by rejecting weaknesses, or like learning from somebody else's mistakes.
Yeah.
But there were people who were influential in my life. For example, one of my uh, friends in Russia taught me to think big. I was at that time in construction business, and I didn't really have uh, ambitions or even capacity to think in terms of national or international markets. Whereas he did not have any of those limitations, and interacting with him helped me to get rid of my limitations. So then I saw an opportunity to dominate certain sectors of financial market in Russia. I moved for it because I didn't have those mental blocks which would preclude me from going after those markets. But that person, a CEO of a major company, he wasn't a nice person. So I wasn't trying to imitate him in all aspects.
You just stay with that for a minute. It makes me smile. Took me back about 15 years ago, and I had um, in the days when Russia and Ukraine were much closer. I think he was a Ukrainian who'd actually been in the Russian USSR army, and he'd moved into banking. And he was describing a famous bank, a global American, very, very big bank. You would know. I want to protect the bank for why you'll hear in a minute. And he was talking about his bosses and how they behaved. And I'd been doing some study into toxic behavior and narcissists and psychopaths. And I go, well, actually, the way they're behaving is like a narcissist and a psychopath. And let me describe how they behave. And he goes, yes, yes, yes. And he ticked off about 15 qualities. And they said, can you teach me? I said, yeah, I can teach you how to avoid these people and how to survive against them. He goes, no, 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 you get me wrong. I want to be like them. I said, oh, get out of here, like bugger off. And but no, he saw that was the way to succeed, was to be evil like them and very rich. And as you know, in financial services, it does reward some people who have highly questionable tactics. As long as they get their Ferrari, they don't mind if they give you triple D rated mortgage backed securities, which they claim are AAA, as we saw in the financial crash. Let me just take you through a few questions linked to inspiring leadership. Moral quotient is the topic I want to carry on with. Have you ever made a decision in business or life that you knew was ethically questionable, but you justified it anyway? And what was your reason, and do you regret it?
No, most of the time, not most of the time. Actually, let me put it this way. As a teenager, I like to play chess. Then I enrolled in a college which likes to position itself as the Russian MIT. It was called Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology. So I was always in the activities where you cannot really cheat your way through. In chess, you don't win by stealing a piece of the board when your opponent is looking the other way. If you do, then everybody in that chess club is going to lose respect for you. You yourself going to lose respect for yourself. Same applies to math, physics, etc. Yeah, there are some marginal opportunities to be a fraudster in every area of life. But in reality, you don't become an Einstein by cheating with your math. And so my values and life approaches was by playing clean. And I can make a grand statement that I have not taken those shortcuts because the United States government spends millions and millions of dollars trying to find any pretext to extradite me to Russia. The federal prosecutor testified in the federal court that they had unlimited budget for this task. They failed in all 5 cases. and we're failing now in case number 6. So I have this position, documented position, where I can say there are no skeletons in my closets, simply because I chose to do it this way. You see, unlike many people in financial business, people whom you just describe as Machiavellian, narcissists, etc., I'm an accidental businessman. I never set an objective for myself. I want to be a financial uh, leader or whatever, billionaire. I want to be bigger than Musk, and I want my flying rocket to be larger than Musk's and Bezos. No, nothing of the kind.
No.
I ended up in business because I was kicked out from college
Yeah.
for business activities. That was, by the way, related to my naivete when I said that older people knew that the reforms in Russia were always short lived. I later learned it, but I learned it the hard way.
Hmm.
So when I started in business, encouraged by Michael Gorbachev, who was pro reform, a year later, the political pendulum swung back, and I was kicked out from college for business activities and distribution of monetary funds not in proportion of labor. I'm quoting the official document with which I was kicked out from college, and I was ordered to go to Afghanistan to wash my sins with blood, an
Wow.
order which I disobeyed.
Yeah.
And
You
became
probably wouldn't be alive if you'd gone to Afghanistan, would you? You'd be dead.
No, that wasn't high on my plans to go and shoot at people. It was even lower in my plans to have people shooting at me.
Yeah. And just on this topic of people shooting at you and difficult times, you and I talked before. I often find with other guests on the podcast, this question is very powerful. And I want to ask it to you. Can you share a dark moment in your life and what it taught you?
Realistically, there was only one moment which was emotionally devastating. Until that moment, which I encountered when I was 40 years old, I felt that I had like Teflon nervous system, that no problems would penetrate my skin, would unnerve me. At the age of 40, I looked like 25, and I felt that way. But then my wife of 17 years, whom I loved dearly, died suddenly of cancer
I'm sorry.
just 10 weeks after the first symptom. And then I was devastated.
Mm.
I think I dare say that, with minor exceptions, maybe first weeks when I was visibly devastated, I continued carrying on in a manner where observers would think that I was doing fine. But it was absolutely not the same because I lost the drive and was going through the motions just out of self discipline, and it's not the same.
Yeah. And you said to me when we were talking about, and I'm so sorry for the loss of your wife, your muse, I think you call her your partner, Elena, and that you lost your sense of, we talk about meaning and purpose, what I call PQ on the CEO's compass. But you are lucky that you've now got a new partner. Tell us how that's helped you find your meaning and purpose again and what her name is.
Well, when I lost Elena, it was so painful that for the first time in my life, I started to use hard liquor. For 2 months after her death, I would drink a bottle of whiskey every night
Wow.
just to dull the pain, and I didn't even feel drunk. It was just to dull the pain, which was very acute. But I still had my brains, and I knew that it wasn't a way to deal with this issue for a long time. I needed to snap out of it. And I'm an entrepreneur. So when I decide to start a new life, I put things into motion. So I decided and implemented the objective of starting new life with new partner, new countries, new languages, new businesses, new everything. And I was lucky. I met a person who is still my partner, Silvina Maschini. She is extraordinarily talented. She is an Argentinian, she's American now. She's been living in the United States for over 25 years. But originally, she's from Argentina, of Italian origin, and she's very, very talented and very acclaimed as a business person and entrepreneur.
Fantastic. Well, I'm so pleased for you, having been through such a tough time. And I've had a couple of friends of mine who, um, when they went through a tough time, they used alcohol as a crutch, but it isn't worth doing. I've never really been a heavy drinker. In fact, I don't drink alcohol at all now. And my brother, who's a surgeon, the same. We've both given up because we just found it affects us too badly. Talking about that, how do you maintain your health and well-being now? And what advice would you give to others?
Well, the first observation is that so many people in business neglect their health and well-being because they are often subject of too much stress, too much work pressures. Many people don't take vacations in high positions. So it's a very strange situation where people are very successful and rich, but cannot afford something which people in Europe take for granted, like taking a month or a month and a half off and going for a vacation. Uh, I seen enough people getting, heart attacks, dying in other fashion, etc., to realize that even from business perspective, even if your objective is to be successful in what you do, health is something you need to maintain, and it starts with psychological well-being. You need to draw positive energy from whatever elements you can. Good music, nature, vacations, architecture, trips, a great dog, or whatever. Uh, and for me, I'm doing all of that. And as for my fitness routine, for a long time it was martial arts. But starting with pandemic, it's tennis.
Hmm.
All gyms were shut down in 2020, and I had to look for something I could do in open air outside during the pandemic, and that's how I started to take tennis lessons.
Fantastic. Well, we're almost at the end, Alex, and we're going to, in a minute, do your top tip. But before we do that, you, for me, have demonstrated a phenomenal level of what I call RQ, resilience quotient, coping with adversity, setbacks, disappointments, things not working out as you'd hoped. What's your advice to others listening to have more resilience, but not in a way that it damages your health by having to have a bottle of whiskey a night? So, what's your advice on resilience?
Well, first of all, I don't want to create a false impression. I'm a wrong Russian. Unlike stereotypical Russian, I don't drink vodka or hard liquor, etc. It was an exceptional period in my life where I needed that crutch uh, to survive through a period of acute pain. And once I snapped out and started a new life, that period was over.
Yeah.
Uh, in fact, even looking back, I realize that even alcohol has some place in life, because sometimes you have this stress related to losing somebody or just work stress, etc. And you can use short term something which is not advisable to use long term.
Yeah. Yeah.
As for resilience, I don't really know. It's something you either have or you don't, because it's so easy to give up and quit with distance. Like when I was 40, at about that time, I used to run marathons, and it's pretty strenuous exercise. You need to run for over 3 hours in my case. I'm not from Kenya, I cannot do it in 2 hours. And during all that time, the body, its different parts tell you, why are you doing to it to yourself? Why don't you just, walk from here and go to a nice place, just chill, and so forth. So, in order to go the distance, you first of all need to decide to go the distance. You need to have this drive, and it's not an obvious desire, because many people don't see the need. Why, instead of just doing barbecues with friends on the porch, whatever backyard, you need to train and then run, go through all this ordeal. But if you decide to do it, then you need to know how to do it, because if you run too fast, you're not going to run the whole distance. So then it becomes just a matter of technique. But technique it's useless to discuss it until you decide to go the distance despite the cost, aggravations, pain, all of that.
Well, you've gone the distance, and congratulations. Good luck with what you're doing. We're now at the final stage, which is your top tip. So, would you kindly say your name, what you're doing now, a little bit about what you've done in the past in just 2 minutes, and give us your top leadership tip? And that will end the podcast beautifully, Alex. Over to you.
My name is Alex Konanykhin. I'm founder and CEO of Unicoin. I've had many other business ventures during my life, starting from owning banks, exchanges, and an arbitrage business in Russia. Something which was fun while it lasted. Unfortunately, it led, like in many similar cases, to a kidnapping by the KGB, which I was fortunate to escape alive. And at that time, I decided that I would want to rebuild my business on a solid ground. And that's why, instead of returning to Russia, in 1992, I made the decision to come to the United States. Here, I've been in IT business, which led me to various projects, including Unicorn Hunter Show, and later Unicoin, a project which I believe can grow into made in the USA alternative to Bitcoin, transparent and technologically superior. As for your question about top tip on leadership, I don't believe that there is a universal formula, universal tip which can apply to each situation. If there was such a advice, everybody would have known it. I think that probably the most useful thing to understand about business is such formula doesn't exist. So you need to figure out a specific solution for specific time, industry, and place. The strategies which worked for me in Russia in early 90s in financial business would be totally wrong for real estate business in Switzerland now. Even slight changes in those variables make old approaches incorrect. For example, I was very successful in starting a bank and turning into the largest bank in the country because I was among the first to create the bank. 2 years later, everybody and their nephew were trying to create a bank, and there were a dime a dozen. And that strategy would lead more likely to losses than immense riches.
Yeah.
And it was the same country and the same industry, just wrong timing. So that's what I want everybody to understand. Don't expect somebody to give you the advice which can make you rich. You will need to crack the code on your own, and this code is going to be specific to what you do in a particular place, particular industry, and particular time.
That's very wise advice. And Alex, thank you very much for being on the Inspiring Leadership podcast, for one hell of a story, which is fascinating. Thank you very much. Good luck with CEO and founder of Unicoin. I hope it works out for you. And once again, thank you from all of the listeners and from myself for your contribution.
Thank you for your invitation, Jonathan.